Good afternoon from the lovely islands of Hawaii. This is Allen Murabayashi with another live episode of I Love Photography. Back in the New York studio is Sarah Jacobs. Hello, Sarah Jacobs.
Hey, Alan, how you doing?
It is once again a very early day for me, and so when I started the broadcast, I had your face up there, and I forgot to put my face. So here's my face. We have a
Oh,
lot of photography to talk about today, Sarah.
yeah, we do.
A lot of photographers, full-time photographers, photography rather than uh, non-full-time photographer photography. We have some of
Right.
that too.
Yeah, we do. We have some drones, of course, as
We
always.
got we have to talk about drones, right?
Gotta talk about drones. Yep.
Let's start with yet another photographer being killed, uh, doing their job. It's just the saddest thing. It's kind of you don't understand. Well, at any rate, in Iraq, there's a lot of sectarian violence, as people are aware of. Um, Sunnis and Shiites not getting along, as they historically haven't, but things seem to be escalating because of an Al Qaeda splinter called ISIS, the what is it, Iraq, Syria, some sort of alliance of these guys coming in and trying to have some old school beat down law, but they've captured a number of cities. And at any rate, there is a photographer named Cameron Najim Ibrahim who, 27 years old, I believe, or 28 years old, and had started a 100-person photo agency called Metrography. And Metrography wasn't just concerned with shooting images of violence and the sectarian violence, etc. They were basically covering the nation. They were covering Iraq in a way that I think, we talked about everyday Africa and everyday Asia, and particularly with everyday Africa, they were trying to show images that defeated stereotypes of what Africa looked like. By just having normal, instead of having, a guy walking around the safari, in some very native tribal outfit. They were showing like real life, or they do show real life images. And I think the same is true of metrography, just showing like really daily life in Iraq and how, um, although we see like an image here where there's like a bombed out area or just a lot of detritus on the ground, uh, in the end, like everyday life is kind of boring. The boring everyday life, and
Yeah,
there's like
yeah.
really sweet images.
That agency does a great job of showing both the good and the bad
Yeah.
of daily life in Iraq. It's very even.
So he was killed in sectarian violence. Here's a nice story on the Time Life box of his images. I mean, such a young guy. All of these young kids are getting
I know. I
killed.
feel like I feel like we're talking about a 20-something every other week on this
Yeah.
show. Photojournalist passing away.
They are the ones that go out and try to make a name for themselves. Well, in this case, I mean, it's his own country. It's just so sad, so sad. Metrography uses PhotoShelter to store and distribute some of their images here. So we found metrography.photoshelter.com. A lot of, again, and these being kind of the broader package of images, they're just like so much more normal. Like here's like a Flag Day image, or people like riding their bicycles. Um, so our thoughts go out to Ibrahim's family, and hopefully we won't have to talk about another photographer being killed for a while.
Yeah.
Um, Here's our drone feature for the day. This kind of blew me away. I mean, it did and it didn't. So this photographer uh, took his drone to the beach in Madison, Connecticut, and he launched the drone up into the air to take some photos. And this woman went ballistic on him, literally went ballistic
Yeah.
on him, assaulted him. He had the presence of mind while he was being assaulted to turn on his iPhone and start recording, which is a good thing because when the cops came, she accused him of assaulting her. And when they took him aside, as they do to hear each party's story, he showed them the video of her like punching him, assaulting him, tearing his t-shirt, throwing him to the ground, and subsequently she was arrested for assault.
It's
So
strange. It's strange how calm he acted during this entire thing. If you watch the video, he's being very reasonable with the woman, just saying, "Can you please stop assaulting me?"
yeah, yeah, yeah. He is actually remarkably calm, and he's reminding the woman that it's a public place and it's his right to photograph. And he wasn't being a creeper. It's not like he had a telephoto lens on the beach taking photos of women and children in their bikinis and stuff. He was doing a drone photo, like
Yeah.
so many cool overhead drone photos that we've seen. And he was just going about his business, and he had like a stack of batteries because, as we know, those batteries don't last very long when they're up in the air. And I mean, justice was served finally.
Yeah. Well, this lady was crazy.
She was crazy, and I really want to. I'm very curious to know what happens to her. So we'll keep tabs on this for you, internet. And if you saw the video and you saw anything that struck your fancy, use our hashtag. Hashtag I
Hashtag,
love photo.
yeah, hashtag I love photo.
This was another, talk about social media and virality and stuff that you see in your Facebook feed. I can't remember how long ago it was. Probably like about 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Somebody started the Fake Chuck Westfall blog. And for those of you who don't know, Chuck Westfall was in charge of marketing for Canon here in the U.S. And somebody started the Fake Chuck Westfall blog when Canon was having a lot of problems with their cameras not being able to focus, and starting with denials that no, there's no problem, and then a lot of pro photographers chiming in there was a problem. So anyway, Fake Chuck Westfall started blogging and saying stuff that you wanted the real Chuck Westfall to be able to say about the cameras, like these cameras suck, you should switch to Nikon, and all this kind of stuff. And it was very reminiscent of the Goldman elevator tweets, which got a book deal. But I think that the Goldman elevator tweets were a little more mainstream than the Fake Chuck Westfall blog, so I don't know that there's going to be a book deal. But anyway, the author of that finally revealed himself, and it was a photographer in Suriname, South America, to everyone's surprise, because they thought it would be guys in the U.S. who are a little closer to the action, but it was just this photographer, and he just said it kind of well, Chuck retired, so it was kind of like, how long are you going to play off the retired guy? But they're funny. At the end, he's like, Nikon's not so good. Maybe switch back to Canon. So Carol Donk. Good job fooling everyone, Carol. Let's talk about some photos. Sarah, you brought up D-Day last week.
Yeah. And the
And
week
then,
before that, too.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of, well, all of a sudden, because it was D-Day, the 70th anniversary, we just saw a ton of photos from D-Day. And Esquire had these incredible color images from the Battle of Normandy. Back then, not a whole lot of color film was being shot, particularly by the most of the embedded photographers were using black and white, but some of them were using color. And I wouldn't say that these were the greatest photos of the day.
That would be Kappa's.
That would be Kappa's, but these are just interesting color photos from the day. And actual color photos, not like those fake color ones that we've seen.
Yeah, I was actually
various
wondering,
places.
looking at these, if these were just colorized black and whites, but you're saying they're real color photographs.
I guess they have the negs or something, and they know that they're authentic color, or they looked at the grain structure and they could tell it wasn't black and white film or something. But kind of neat to see. I mean, of course, the images are slightly desaturated with the ravages of time, but they remind me a lot of those Shorpy images from the mid 20th century that we've seen. They're just like really just cool. Just like a look about them. Like this one, the guys in the boat. It reminds me of like Saving Private Ryan. Neat photos. So these were cool on Esquire, and then we came across these images. So a Reuters photographer, Chris Helgren, found some iconic photos from the war, and then went back to the same place and reshot the picture as it is now. And I love before and afters. You know, whether it's like plastic surgery or whether it's D-Day, it's just so interesting to see a lot of the buildings still standing. A lot of the main surface features like roads are still there, and now it's filled with tourists. Just kind of neat to see. And you know, you see all these soldiers storming the beach, and now you see people in their swimsuits just hanging out in the same places where crisis was averted, because we were able to push back the Germans. Photography's cool. I dig it. There was a guy, God, what was it, on BuzzFeed or something like that, who then took the images and then composited them together. So they were kind of like both scenes were in there in one photo, which I thought was a little gimmicky, but it was kind of cool too, to see, you know, a guy being dragged out of the ocean, but then you would see, you know, like a beach umbrella next to him because of the Photoshop compositing there. That was
that would have been interesting with these if he had gotten more current shots, kind of emulating what's actually happening in the D-Day photos.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like oh gosh, I always forget the name of that thing where they put the old photo against the new photo. You know, from Luminance, we had that speaker, and he had the old photos.
Oh, yeah.
People were holding the photos in front of the scene.
We do always blank on that name. That's really bad.
Name, but it's such a neat little concept. But I love it. I love the juxtaposition of the old and the new. It's very, very cool stuff. Here's one that you found, and actually a neat story as well. Everyone knows the Napalm Girl, Nick Ut's Pulitzer Prize-winning image from Vietnam.
Yeah, and we've had the pleasure of meeting Nick Utz too at Eddie Adams in 2012. Well, this article on Vice, not the best article that Vice has ever put out. The writer definitely says that this could be arguably the first viral photograph, which I can think of a few prior that definitely went viral. First man on the moon, you know, V-Day kiss in Times Square, all that stuff. But what I really like about this article is that she compares, sort of loosely, the Napalm Girl to Nick Ut's later photo of Paris Hilton crying as she's gotten arrested, which was taken on the same day, June 8th. So, and she interviews Nick. She says they're both nursing hangovers. She interviews Nick, and, you know, he just talked a lot about how he's much happier photographing celebrities rather than the tragedies of war, which I think we can all understand.
Well, and he was very, very young when he shot that photo.
Yeah, I think he was 19 or something.
Yeah, I think he was a teenager when he shot that. So imagine seeing this stuff going around you, again, like in your home country. You've basically been invaded by the United States. They're dropping napalm all over the place, and you're just running around with your camera, and then this happens in front of you. And then for those of you who know, the Napalm Girl survived, and Nick and Kim is her name, are actually pretty good friends. And they do a lot of talks together, or you know, talking about that day. And she talks a lot about overcoming personal tragedy and peace and stuff like that. So it's really, really moving to hear her speak if you ever get a chance. And
yeah,
Nick, of course, has got 1,000 stories. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a neat little article. Napalm Girl celebrates the 42nd anniversary, and the Paris Hilton photo celebrates the 8th anniversary of the 7th anniversary of Paris Hilton crying. Good stuff. That's funny.
Good stuff, Vice.
Good stuff. The iPhone Photography Awards, another photo competition, Sarah Jacobs.
Yeah, this has been running since 2007. So I think the most interesting things about this competition is that you're able to see the winners from 2008, and you can really see the technology from, you know, the iPhone, how much better it's gotten. I mean, the 3G was a 3-megapixel camera, so not great.
and not only that, like, not a great lens, not really great processing engine.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or maybe, I mean, as you can tell from looking at past competitions that this year definitely is the best images yet. And I feel like, I mean, that might just be maybe more photographers are entering the contest, or maybe people are just becoming more photographic savvy, you know? They just know how to make a better picture because of the accessibility of the iPhone camera and Instagram and Facebook and all of that.
I've always contended that people are getting more visually sophisticated because one thing, they consume a lot of images on the internet and on their phones, etc. But the other thing is because they can practice taking photos. It's kind of like, as much as the 10,000 hours Malcolm Gladwell thing has been debunked, it's kind of like that. It's that repetition that makes them better at taking photos. And if they're being conscious about this photo wasn't as good as somebody else's photo of the same scene, how can I improve that? Yeah, I totally agree. I think people are getting to be better photographers, which hopefully means they'll appreciate good photography more as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a great outcome.
And hire more photographers. Oh, you know that, which reminds me, I forgot to add this article that I found that more and more people, well, I don't know that it's a trend yet, but more and more people are hiring photographers for just everyday photography, for everyday activities.
Oh yeah, I read about that too this week.
Yeah, and I think it was in the Times, and so this couple that would come down from Rhode Island, whenever they came down to New York, they would hire this photographer to sort of photograph the day of them with their family going to the museum, et cetera, because why not? You know, if you're taking a nice trip, what's it to have a photographer come and photograph you for a few $100? You know, the average room in Manhattan, hotel room, is like $500. You're already spending a lot of money just to hang out in New York. You know, it's an expensive town.
You might as well document it well.
Have some nice photos. Treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Treat yourself, right? That's a good. We should add that to the rule. Maybe we'll look that up and we'll add it to the blog so people can see that.
Yeah, I'll add the link.
Another series that has been kind of going around for a while, but it came back up in my newsfeed because there was another sort of editorial about the images, and I went back and I looked at them and I said, wow, we should have covered them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
David Magnusson, I believe, is a Swedish photographer. He's from Scandinavia, and he was investigating this concept of purity balls, which I had peripherally heard about in the past, but then I read more about it through David's own writing. First of all, it's this kind of creepy, very American thing. And the concept behind the purity ball is that these teenage girls are actually from the age of 5 and less, dedicate themselves to their virginity in sort of consort with their dad. And they take these photos, these sort of creepy photos, and then they go to a ball.
They do like it's like a traditional dance. They do this dance with their dad that kind of solidifies the promise, or seals the promise, basically, of them remaining virgins until marriage. It's the portraits, they do ring a little creepy.
Creepy and sexual, which is supposed to be the opposite of what the charity ball is supposed to be. A purity ball, rather, not charity ball.
Not charity ball.
Supposed to be.
This series has gotten a ton of coverage from from everything from Slate to even Refinery 29, which is just a women's lifestyle site. Yeah. Jezebel, the feminist site. I mean, it's gotten a really great amount of coverage because it's such a interesting topic, and we all want to debate. You know, is this right? Is this wrong? Why do these daughters do this? It's strange.
Yeah. So the commentary that I've seen is that it's really weird that the dads have this insistence, and again, I think it seems to be like a very American phenomenon, where the dad's insistence is on that these women pledge them, or these girls pledge themselves to their virginity, et cetera, et cetera. And then Magnusson explains that actually it's initiated in a lot of cases by the girl. So in a lot of these towns, like, the girls will initiate it and then ask the dad to the ball. The other commentators that I read said, yeah, but these are children. they don't like they're asking their fathers because that's culturally what they're supposed to do, what they've been trained to do. So it's not like they have the presence of mind when you're 5 to be like, hey, let me pledge myself to my purity. The other thing that I couldn't figure out is Magnusson posing them in a way to be a little creepy? Because he's controlling the photo.
Yeah, he is. And I read that he works with them for probably about an hour right before dawn is what I read. So I think he is helping pose them. Definitely. I mean, it's they talk a lot about it being an American tradition, but it's definitely not an American idea that a woman is pure when she's a virgin.
Right.
But the purity ball idea, making it this kind of, glamorized thing definitely is. And that's what makes it strange. It's also you mentioned them going to their dads, which is strange. It's too bad that they're not going to their moms and this is a mother-daughter thing.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it work that way? It's just
that whole patriarchal thing.
Right, the protecting, right, yeah, which...
It turns out there's a male version of this, and I can't remember what it's called, and I'll have to research to see if there are any photos of that as well. But a lot of people are like, this is so sexist, why isn't there a male version? And it turns out there is a male version.
Wow.
So I'll research that for next week, but these, I think the photos are beautifully composed, artfully composed, well shot, and they're creepy.
Yeah.
Which I think is the conclusion of most critics who have seen these images.
Yeah. I love the low contrast look that he gave to all of them. It's this kind of whitewash, beautiful look. Yeah.
What is that like? Is that a VSCO Visco filter going on there?
I don't know. I hope so that I can apply it.
Yeah, these are all iPhone photos. No. We love this cover, or I love this cover.
Yeah.
Mitch Feinberg, who's a product photographer in New York, took this photo from the Boston bombings. They collected all these shoes. They put them in the shape of a heart. He took this photo. Everybody loved it. This week's issue of Time is about butter and how we were duped into thinking in the 70s that butter wasn't good for you, so everyone switched to margarine, and we all went to a more carbohydrate-high diet, and then we had all of these problems with diabetes, et cetera, et cetera. So Time's cover this week is about eating butter, but more to the point, Mitch Feinberg shot this photo of this ribbon of butter, and I just thought it was a very artfully composed ribbon of butter.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I mean, the butter, with the way the light shining through that, just looks heavenly.
Well, and so I was thinking, I had just visited Europe, and what was that, like a month or two ago? And when I was in Monaco, we went to some of these fancy restaurants, and they would have this huge block of butter, think 6 or 8 bricks, like normal brick size, but in one huge block of butter, under a glass container. And when the bread cart came by, because of course there's a bread trolley, when the bread trolley comes by, this heap of butter is sitting there, and they pull the glass off of it, and then the guy basically shaves you off a ribbon of butter. So this is actually
amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And I had started reading about how butter is good for you, or it's not as bad as people had once thought. So I was like, give me more butter, baby. It was delicious. Mitch Feinberg, man, great product photography. Love his work. This series was on Slate. They have a photo blog called Behold, which has some great stuff. What we have to do one day is round up all of the mainstream news outlets and talk about their photo blogs, because I think there's some really, really great stuff going on there.
Let's definitely do that.
So Mark Gerald is a psychoanalyst, and he started getting interested in taking portraits of other psychoanalysts in their space. So he took a bunch of classes to learn how to light and get better at composition and photography generally. And so for the past 10 years, he's been doing portraits of psychoanalysts in their space, which are lovely. And he talks about the motivation, of course, being psychoanalyst, talking about the motivation for doing this and why the psychoanalysts are consenting to do it in the first place. Pretty interesting article to read. I thought it was so fascinating to see sort of the diversity of interior design that was going on with these analysts.
I know. They all have very great decor that I feel like represents their personalities wonderfully. And this is a great example of a hobbyist, because he's a psychoanalyst. He's not a full-time photographer, but a hobbyist really taking great shots, and finding an interesting subject matter that people want to look into. I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in any of these rooms. You just look into the rooms and you think about all the conversations that have happened.
Oh my God.
Between their patients and them. It's really good.
So the art of psychoanalysis was created by Freud, and Freud came up with this idea of putting people on the couch so you wouldn't have direct eye-to-eye contact with your analyst, in part because he thought, I believe, I'm probably misquoting this, but he believed that would help people open up a little bit more. And so it's funny to see, when you think about the analyst couch, you think that it's an anachronism, but here are all these couches.
Yeah, no, they're still going by the couch rule there.
Yeah.
I love this one. I think this woman, I'd want her to be my psychoanalyst.
Yeah, and look, she's in New York. We could give her a call.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's so great. It's funny how they have all these sort of like hippie couch coverings too. Mm-hmm. It's patterned. Nobody has like the Mies van der Rohe, like classic design couch. They all have these homey. I think probably because they want people to feel comfortable. But see the pattern here.
Yeah,
the pattern on this thing is like the same as this guy's.
Oh, that's true.
It's just funny. It's like a Persian rug thing going. I don't know what it is.
But and these aren't like IKEA setups. No one's got a.
There's no IKEA in here. They're charging $150 an hour, $200 an hour.
Right.
Anyway, great stuff. Mark Gerald. Speaking of psychoanalysts and motivation for doing things, here's Matt Mahon from Austin, Texas, who I've met. A really nice guy. He decided to explore the sex industry, so he talks about how he actually lost his virginity to a prostitute at the age of 14.
Not the best way to go.
Not the best way to go, but I think it happens to a lot of boys. Maybe not so much nowadays, but I think back in the day, like fathers would get their kid a prostitute to like teach him the ropes.
Right. Talk about the opposite of the purity balls.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway,
we're doing a 180 here.
The motivation behind this, we won't go into the motivation, but what he did is he scoured Craigslist or Backpages or whatever people are using to find prostitutes, and he would hire these girls and pay them their regular rate, whatever that was. And I think he said it was anywhere from like $100 to $300 for an hour. And then he would explain to them that he was a photographer and he was doing a series. And he's actually a really great photographer. And so you get these incredibly, again, well-composed, well-lit photos of these different sex workers.
Right, but he's not posing them though. He's doing all documentary stuff.
Well, there's some that are like portrait-y style. So you do see in the series, but they're meant to be sort of documentary. They're not meant to be like. He's not trying to glamorize. Well, I guess it's arguable. I mean, simply by shooting it, I think there's a sort of objectification of the subject just because that's what happens when you take someone's photo. But I think he's really trying to show like the person behind it. A lot in some of the photos, they don't show their faces, and they're not using their full names and whatnot. But you're seeing really nice environmental portraiture, a lot of which are in seedy motels or trying to be not seedy motels.
Right.
Just really great stuff. I really liked the images that I saw, and they're being shown at the Public Trust
in Dallas.
Deep Ellum in Dallas, yeah. Your town.
Yeah, my town. Yep, I'm familiar with Deep Ellum.
There you go. I guess this wasn't probably playing when you were back, or maybe it was and you just didn't know about it. You're
Maybe
back
it
in
was.
Dallas. Maybe it was. Maybe it was. Who knows? Well, back to Vice, man. I guess you were trolling Vice a little bit this week.
I was indeed. This book looks awesome. It's all about Norway's Hells Angels by Marcel Leliënhof. I'm gonna butcher his name. But he talks about in this interview on Vice. He talks about his experience gaining the trust of the Hells Angels, who are historically, very secretive about their culture and their gang, their motorcycle gang. But this photographer is a motorcyclist. He rides, so he knows how to speak the language a little bit. And in order to gain their trust, he said the first night he basically had to drink a lot with the leader. He had to drink him under the table basically to kind of prove himself. And not only that, but he had to get approval from, the Norway branch, the Europe branch, and then the World branch. And
the World branch.
The World branch of Hells Angels, which I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, I didn't realize they were so well organized. That's
apparently so.
Yeah.
But that took, up to 3 years for him to get approval from all of those, from all the different levels, and he spent 5 years photographing them. So, and he talks a lot about how many Hells Angels didn't want to get their photographs taken, and some of them though are very vain and loved it. So it varied.
You know what strikes me about this first image here? Let me go back to it. I think it's one of the Scandinavian countries that has some of the happiest people in the world. The researchers have been tracking happiness index for some time, and I look at this first image, and these are the happiest. That's like the happiest Hells Angel I've ever seen. And of course, it's the photographer next to him. But then again, like this photograph, they have the option of trying to play it tough, but they're all like smiling. They're happy at this wedding.
Yeah, that's true.
Cool
Maybe
stuff.
A different Hells Angels branch would not have as many smiles.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the Norwegians are pretty happy being Hells Angels. You bring up the fact that the guy is a motorcycle guy. Mm-hmm. And I think back to some of the other stuff that we've seen today, like the Psychoanalysts and Matt Mahon having had this experience as a teen. Like these are all personal interests that they've gone to photograph. And I think the photos not only show how good they are as photographers, but they're sort of reflective of these people's interests in these topics. And I think it comes through. It makes for better photos, obviously, when you have a vested interest in what you're photographing.
Yeah.
The last set of photos that we have today, again, I saw this, Craig Mitchell-Dyer, who is a photographer out in Portland, Oregon, friend of ours, shoots a lot of weddings, and I saw in his feed the first few photos, or one iconic photo from this wedding. What had happened was Michael and April Wolber had booked this very beautiful, iconic venue, and then there were wildfires that started. And the firemen came by, and they're like, guys, there's a fire coming. You guys have to go. And they booked this venue, and they paid for the venue, and April started crying. She's like, oh, my God, we can't, blah, blah, blah. And the photographer, Josh Newton, said, okay, can we take a few photos before we leave? And the fireman said, okay, you can take a few photos. So to make the best out of what could have been really kind of a bummer of a day, Josh Newton went out, and these are from the ceremony, so all of this is going on, but then he went and took the wedding portrait.
Wow.
So using the fire as a backdrop, he took this photo.
These are incredible. And these have just spread, I'm going to say it, like wildfire.
Yeah, they have spread like wildfire. They sure have. And this one is amazing. This one is amazing.
This is the best one. I feel like He's probably using a little fill light on them.
Yeah, I think he's using a little fill light because it's getting a little dark back there.
Yeah, it is. But they look illuminated. Amazing. Yeah, amazing stuff.
And I guess they said after they took the photos, the different vendors called in a few favors, and they moved the venue, and they were able to have the wedding as planned. They just picked up everything, moved all the food, moved all the tables, etc., and they had the wedding. And man, iconic, wonderful shot. Of course, the internet being what the internet is, everyone has to throw in their opinion into the ring, and some people are just downright mean about it, and they're saying, I can't believe they bothered to take photos, like, you know, that's so disrespectful, there's a fire going on. And, you know, other people are like, well, what are they supposed to do, like grab hoses and try to put the fire out? Like, no, the fire is burning, there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
Make the most. Make some lemonade.
Yep.
This is some nice lemonade. That was a lot of photography today, Sarah.
Yeah, a lot of great images.
And yeah, and I didn't share the photo. Let me tell you, you know, last week I told you I'm in Hawaii because my grandmother has turned 99 years old, which of course is an amazing feat. Her husband made it to 100, so I'm hoping that she also makes it to 100. But so I brought, as I did when my grandfather turned 100, I brought back my little battery-powered light with the intent of taking an outdoor portrait, because I did it last time for the 100th and it came out really well. I was happy with that. I wanted to sort of replicate it. So while the family was over and everybody was eating lunch, I went outside and I started setting up my tripod and my ProPhoto Acute B and the umbrella, and I took some test shots and I was happy with the image. I went back in and I said, hey, Grandma, let's go take a photo now outside. And 99 years old, she goes, I don't want to go outside. And I was like, oh, you don't want to take your picture? And she goes, I don't want to go outside. I was like, oh, okay. Why don't we move everything back inside and take a picture? So just like the wildfire, we just, you know, we made do. We made do with the cards we were dealt, and you know, we got a nice little family portrait.
Oh.
So you got to do what you got to do, is what I'm saying.
And you got to follow the 99-year-old's instructions too.
Hey, whatever she wants, you know, she gets. She loves to eat cake. We've been feeding her cake after every dinner. Because why not?
Why not?
99. She's 99. Well, Sarah, I'm coming back from Hawaii next week, so I'll be in New York.
Okay.
We can do this from New York, and it'll be a normal time for me, not 6 a.m. in the morning or 6:30 a.m. in the morning. But the sun's out, and I got a lot of stuff to do today. I have a high school reunion tomorrow to go to.
We'll have fun. And take more pics.
I will do my best to do that. So for Sarah Jacobs, this is Allen Murabayashi signing off with another episode of I Love Photography Live. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.